Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It sounds like we know the direction where Brent Venables, this Oklahoma Sooners program, want to go with the D coordinator hire, and they're going down to Jacksonville State and grabbing DC Zac Alley, who did a phenomenal job at Jacksonville State in the 2023 year. And to be transparent with many of you guys, when this news broke late last night, a lot of people were saying phenomenal hire, good hire. I wasn't too familiar with Zac Alley. So I spent a little bit of time this morning going back, watching some Jacksonville State defense, looking and kind of reading about Zac Alley's history and where he's been and what he's done. I'm going to talk about what Zac Alley brings to this Oklahoma defensive coordinator position. And I'll say this, after watching what he did with Jacksonville State in 2023, reading about the experience that Zac Alley has had during his short but kind of loaded resume as a young defensive coordinator, I'm really excited about what Zac Alley could be as the defensive coordinator for Oklahoma. I'm going to talk about some of those reasons. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. And this Sooners program has been a blast to talk about the last couple of weeks. Obviously, hiring a new offensive coordinator, hiring a new defensive coordinator, getting very active in the transfer portal. I've had a blast talking this program. The amount of support you guys have shown the boys has truly been amazing. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear your guys' thoughts, opinions on Zac Alley and the potential fit that we see with Oklahoma. Now, getting into Zac Alley, the first thing I want to talk about is what Brent Venables and why Brent Venables went this way, right? You look at Ted Roof, and we talked about this late last night. That defense, it felt like it was underperforming, right? And you look at the improvement this unit made from 2022 to 2023, it certainly was there. But I think a lot of Oklahoma fans looked at that defense, looked at the talent that they had, and said it probably should be performing better than it was. And I think Brent Venables had to be a little bit more hands-on with this defense than he would have liked to be as the head coach for the Oklahoma Sooners. So he brings in a guy in Zac Alley who, one, I think the most important aspect about this hire is Brent Venables knows Zac Alley, right? They worked together at Clemson. Zac Alley was an assistant during Brent Venables' time at Clemson. So having that known commodity, right? You know how he likes to coach and engage with the athletes. You know what he wants to do on defense. You know his work ethic. You know how he views the sport of football. I think that one is a massive plus. And then two, and quite frankly, I think a lot of Oklahoma fans felt this. There wasn't a ton of energy from Ted Roof, right? You never felt like when he was up in front of a microphone, he was exuding a ton of energy. It didn't seem like he was an ace on the recruiting trail. You bring in a young coach like Zac Alley, it does seem like he will be a more charismatic individual, bringing some more juice and energy to this defense. And no doubt in my mind, that will resonate on the recruiting trail as well. But most importantly, I want to talk about what Zac Alley has done as a defensive coordinator. And you go back to that 2023 season with Jacksonville State. I watched back a few games. There's a lot to like how he operates this defense. Now, the overarching take I have is Jacksonville State made the jump from the FCS level to the FBS level in 2023. And when you make that jump, the talent level wasn't going to necessarily be there in comparison to some of the opposing offenses that you would see. And normally you'll see a defense really struggle, right? Defense has a lot to be correlated with how you recruit and the talent that you have. And Zac Alley, with probably a lower talented group than a lot of the offenses that he was facing, put together a phenomenal defense for Jacksonville State. You look at some of the numbers, 22.7 points per game allowed. That was 31st in the country. 4.7 yards per play allowed. That was 13th in the country. Only 2.8 yards per carry to opposing running backs. That was number 4 in the country. Also forced almost 2 turnovers per game. That was top 20 in the country. So you look at a lot of important metrics, scoring defense, turnovers, how they were against the run. This was a top 30 defense in a lot of those categories in the country with talent level that probably wasn't all that great for Jacksonville State. So you look at how he was able to elevate this defense for Jacksonville State in 2023. I think that certainly speaks to itself. And another thing that's worth noting is Zac Alley played opposite an offense that ran the 4th highest tempo in the country. And that's a conversation that I think needs to be had, because when you're hiring a defensive coordinator, defenses are going to look different, right? When you're Michigan playing a defense, when that Michigan offense runs extremely slow, wants to play kind of that time of possession game, you're coaching a defense in a different way. As opposed to if you're coaching the defense opposite that Oklahoma offense that wants to score a lot of points, wants to run fast, you got to call a defense differently. And so Zac Alley has a lot of success calling a defense opposite an offense that wants to run with tempo, that wants to run fast. And I think that was another appealing aspect about this Zac Alley hire is he is used to calling a defense that's opposite of an offense that runs extremely fast. Now, getting into what Zac Alley likes to do on defense. Now, again, I watched a few of this Jacksonville State games, watched some defensive cut-ups. The first thing I noticed, this offensive unit, and you can tell that Zac Alley, and there's interviews of him saying this, like he models how he wants to coach and how he wants to run a defense from Brent Venables. Brent Venables largely, I think he called him a father figure, a mentor. So there's not going to be too much clashing in terms of what Brent Venables and what Zac Alley want to do on the defensive side of the ball. And you certainly see that in terms of how he coached that Jacksonville defense and how he called it. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of 5-man pressures, a lot of 6-man blitzes. He wants to be aggressive. And again, going back to that conversation that we had yesterday, Brent Venables, there's a stark difference in terms of Brent Venables' philosophy than there was with Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley, right? Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley, that defense, they wanted to just win with their offense. And they were saying, hey, if we can we'll give up some yards. Hopefully we can hold an offense to 3 points in the red zone. That's not how Brent Venables, wants to run his defense. He wants to be aggressive. He wants to force negative plays. He wants to force turnovers. And largely in the beginning of that season when Oklahoma had as much success as they had, that's what you saw them do, right? Oklahoma at one point was the number 1 team in negative plays created per game. That's what Brent Venables wants this team to look like. And that's what Zac Alley's goal is on the defensive side of the football, creating negative plays, creating turnovers. And you see a lot of versatility in that defense as well. So from a schematic standpoint, some of the things I saw, you'll see 3-3-5 alignments. You'll see 4-2-5 alignments. You'll see a lot of moving pieces and a lot of moving personnel, a lot of different looks for opposing offenses. And you look at this Oklahoma defense and how it was run using that cheetah in a lot of different ways, probably going to see a lot more of that. And you're going to see a lot of different looks and a lot of different blitz packages. And I really like that because you look at Oklahoma and how that defense is constructed. There are a lot of playmakers on that defense that can do a lot of different things. You think of a guy like Peyton Bowen or a guy like Billy Bowman Jr. or a guy like Deshaun McCullough. Those guys can drop back and play man coverage. They can sit back in zone. They can blitz. They can play in the box. When you have all these, chess pieces, if you will, on the defense, you want to use them in a lot of different ways and get creative in how you use them, how you let them impact the game. And this Oklahoma defense under Zac Alley, I think, is going to allow those playmakers to go make plays. And at times I feel like under Ted Roof, it was a little basic in terms of not allowing and giving the freedom and giving the opportunity for some of these playmakers in the back end to go make plays. So I think what you're most excited about is, one, I think Brent Venables, you trust Brent Venables, and probably should have said that at the top. Brent Venables knows Zac Alley. He's worked with Zac Alley, so he knows what he's getting. But more importantly, Zac Alley, removed from Brent Venables, has shown that he is a phenomenal defensive coordinator at Jacksonville State. I think he's going to be a phenomenal recruiter, but from a defensive schematic standpoint, you're going to see a lot of aggression. You're going to see a lot of multiple different looks. And at the end of the day, what excites Oklahoma fans the most is this defense is extremely talented. From that defensive line, the class that they brought in 2024, guys like David Stone and Nigel Smith, to the back end with guys like Peyton Bowen, Billy Bowman Jr. When you have all this talent, Zac Alley did not have that talent at Jacksonville State. So I think Zac Alley takes this job, looks at this defense, and is extremely excited to use these guys as difference makers and as playmakers, where at times under this Oklahoma offense with Ted Roof, you didn't see enough of that. And so what I think you're going to get from Zac Alley is that kind of what we expected, the Brent Venables defense of creating negative plays, creating turnovers, trying to smother your opponent. And the concern that you might have with the youth of Zac Alley, I understand that, right? He's 29 years old. He's never called a defense at the Power 5 level. He's surrounded by, one, Brent Venables, who is arguably the best defensive-minded coach across the entire country. But more importantly, you look at the defensive staff that Brent Venables has brought into Norman, and there's a lot of experience in that staff, and Zac Alley is going to lean on those guys as well. So I get the concern with potentially the lack of experience, but if I'm an Oklahoma fan, I'm more excited about the potential upside that you're getting, not only on the recruiting trail, but in terms of the aggressive defense that you're going to see for Oklahoma heading into the SEC. At the end of the day, you're getting a defensive coordinator that's going to ask his playmakers to make plays. And Oklahoma has a lot of playmakers. I think they're going to make a lot of plays in 2024. A lot to be excited about with the hire of Zac Alley. Again, I was not too familiar with him when the rumors started happening that he was going to be the guy. Had to do a little deep dive in him. I like it, and I like the energy that he's going to bring to this Oklahoma defense. And you saw he's a Brent Venables mini-me. I would probably agree with that, and I think there's a lot to be excited about that as well. Big fan of this hire after doing some research on him. I think Oklahoma fans have a lot to be excited about. Would love to hear what you guys think in the comment section as well. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas as much as you guys have been doing. And we'll probably be back talking some Oklahoma in the transfer portal relatively soon as well. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.